Hello learners, I am Dr. Jai Singh, Associate Professor, Department of English Literature, the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. I am before you to speak on the topic History of Indian Literature in English, a brief introduction, which is a part of the SWAYAM course, Introduction to Indian Literature in English, Colonialism to Post-Colonialism. When we talk about the history of Indian literature in English, the first book to be published is The Travels of Deen Muhammad in 1794 by Deen Muhammad. Since then, it is flourishing continuously. However, it was the poetry that developed first and got national and international recognition. The founding fathers of Indian poetry in English are Henry Desrosiers, who is popularly known as father of Indian poetry in English, Kashi Prasad Ghosh, Toru Dutt and Madhusudan Dutt. An interesting point about these poets, Toru Dutt, Manmohan Ghosh and Mrs. Naidu, is that they were not really received with open arms by every English critic. Dutt and Naidu were praised by Edmund Goose. Manmohan Ghosh was supported by W. B. Yeats. Each of them was really lauded within a circle. None of them was widely accepted. Nevertheless, each had upon him or her the stamp of foreign approval, of English approval. Another phenomena in this period was the rise of Shri Aurobindo Ghosh, who ran a mission at Pondicherry and is well known for his epic Savitri. The most important poet not only from India, but also from entire Asia is Rabindranath Tagore, whose poetry is praised all over the world and is considered equal to Shakespeare. After poetry, it was the turn of fiction. The first novel in English by an Indian writer was Raj Mohan's Wife by Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay. After the uprising of 1857, some novels in English dealt with the event of this uprising. Women writers also contributed to the field of novel. Toru Dutt wrote two novels, one in French and another one in English, that remained unfinished, Bianca or the Young Spanish Maiden. It is written in English. In the 20th century, Indian literature in English was dominated by novelists. With the dawn of 20th century, Indian independence movement started taking shape, and it influenced many novelists to incorporate various issues related to national and international importance in their novels. Rabindranath Tagore, who was awarded Nobel Prize in Literature in 1913, wrote 4 novels: Broken Nest in 1901, Gora, Fair-Faced in 1910, Ghare Bahare, The Home and the World in 1916, and Cross Currents in 1929. From the second decade of the 20th century onwards, Mahatma Gandhi is a major influence on the Indian English fiction. One of the major novelists of this age is Mulk Raj Anand, who was influenced by Bloomsbury Group. However, when we read his novel Untouchable, which was published in 1935, we find a shift from Bloomsbury to Sabarmati, that is from Western modernism to Gandhian philosophy. He continued his study of the oppressed in his 2 subsequent novels, Coolie and Two Leaves and a Bud. In both of these novels, his concern shifts from the question of caste to those of class. He starts writing novels with happier themes with the trilogy The Village, Across the Black Waters and The Sword and the Sickle. The Big Heart is his last novel before independence. However, he kept writing even after independence. Many of Mulk Raj Anand's literary and political preoccupations reappear in the work of Raja Rao, who wrote only one novel before independence, that is Kantapura in 1938, which is a story of an Indian independence and social transformation through Gandhian way. R. K. Narayan is another big name in the field of Indian novel in English. However, he always avoided political and social commentary in his novels and believes in art for art's sake. His major novels written before independence are Swami and Friends, The Bachelor of Arts, The Dark Room and The English Teacher. Though the field of Indian fiction in English is dominated by Hindus, there are a few Muslim novelists as well. Their novels also deal with the theme of nationalism and are peopled by Hindu characters. For instance, Amir Ali's Conflict and K. A. Abbas' Tomorrow is Ours, a novel of India of today. Ruqayya Shekhawat Hussain is the only noticeable women novelist of this period. She is widely regarded as a pioneer of women liberation in South Asia. Her only novel, Sultana's Dream, was published in 1905. This novel is a mixture of science fiction and a feminist utopia. In this novel, she reverses the roles of man and women, in which women are the dominant sex and the men are subordinate. She also depicts an alternative feminist vision of science, in which inventions such as solar ovens, flying cars and cloud condensers are used to benefit the whole society. Many novelists who started writing before independence continued writing after independence as well. However, the nature and scope of Indian novel in English changed. After independence, the theme of nationalism lost its significance and some other issues took the center stage. Mulk Raj Anand, who was well received before independence, did not get the same response after independence. On the other hand, R. K. Narayan and Raja Rao got better response. Raja Rao, in his second novel, The Serpent and the Rope, abandons the milieu of his beloved South India for the cosmopolitan story spread across Europe and India and deals with the ancient Indian philosophical tradition of dualism and non-dualism. With Cat and Shakespeare, Raja Rao moves away from realism to the difficult region of philosophical fiction. His next novel, Comrade Kilro, is a political novel that focuses on Padmanabha Iyer, a young London-based Indian Marxist who calls himself Kilro after Dostoevsky's character of the same name in the novel Possessed. His other novels are The Chess Master and His Moves, The Policeman and the Rose, and On the Ganga Ghat. R. K. Narayan, well known for his work in the fictional South Indian town of Malgudi, became more prominent after independence. His The Financial Expert, considered to be his masterpiece and hailed as one of the most original works of fiction. His next novel, Waiting for the Mahatma, is based on a fictional visit to Malgudi by Mahatma Gandhi. The Guide is the most representative of R. K. Narayan's writing skills and elements, ambivalent in expression coupled with riddle-like conclusion. This novel won him the Sahitya Akademi Award in 1958. His next novel, The Man-Eater of Malgudi, was published in 1961. The novel was reviewed as having a narrative that is a classical art form of comedy with delicate control. R. K. Narayan's next published work was the 1967 novel The Vendor of Sweets. It was inspired in part by his American visits and consists of extreme characterizations of both the Indian and American stereotypes. Drawing on the many cultural differences, some of his lesser known novels are A Tiger for Malgudi, Talkative Man and The World of Nagraj. A concern to discover some notion of authentic being runs through the 5 novels produced by Arun Joshi. His characters, problems and alienation which afflict them are presented as universal rather than specifically Indian problem. A striking feature of Arun Joshi's fiction is his experimentation with different narrative techniques. In his novel The Foreigner, the narrative freely moves across time and geographical space. In his another novel, The Strange Case of Billy Biswas, the story is told about Bimal Biswas and his obsession with Adivasi culture. The Apprentice is a monologue. The last, Labyrinth, which won him Sahitya Akademi Award, is dominated by the trope of the labyrinth, which might also describe its structure. His last novel, The City and the River, is very different in technique from the earlier ones. He gives up the first person narrative and the realistic mode to write a fable about the corruption of power. It is quite difficult to describe contemporary Indian novelists because it includes the novelists who were born around the time of independence and are still alive. It also includes the novelists who were born after independence and are still writing, and the novelists who were born in the last 2 decades of 20th century and have become prominent novelists. Nayantara Sehgal was born before independence, wrote her first novel, A Time to be Happy, in 1958, and her latest novel, The Fate of Butterflies, was published in 2019. Her novels present the life of the richest section of Indian society, their hypocrisy and shallow values. At the same time, her most discussed novel is Storm in Chandigarh, that deals with the partition of Haryana and Punjab along with linguistic lines. Her Rich Like Us is set during the emergency, plans for departure and mistaken identity. Kamala Markandeya was born before independence and died in 21st century. Her first novel Nectar in Sieve appeared in 1954, and her last novel Bombay Tiger is published posthumously in 2008. Her novels present a remarkable range of characters, from Rukmani, a poor peasant in Nectar in Sieve, through the urban poor of A Handful of Rice to the highest circles of princely life in The Golden Honeycomb. The conflict between tradition and modernity, East and West, runs through her works. The Cofferdams and Pleasure City are contemporary examinations of the meaning of progress. Her writings show more confidence when she writes about her own class. In her novel, The Nowhere Man, perhaps her best work, she deals with racial prejudices against the Indian migrants in Britain, of which she has first-hand knowledge. Her other novels include Some Inner Fury, A Silence of Desire, Possession, and Two Virgins. Anita Desai was born before independence in 1937, whose first novel Cry the Peacock appeared in 1963, and her latest work The Artist of Disappearance appeared in 2011, and in 2014 she was awarded the Padma Bhushan. Her westernized, educated women appear to have the luxury of freedom of choice, but deeper analysis reveal them to be frustrated and emotionally dependent. Except in her most recent novels, her protagonists have all been women and range from daughter and young wife in Cry the Peacock to the middle-aged wife and mother in Where Shall We This Summer, to a grandmother and grandfather in Fire on Mountain. All these women tend to be fragile introverts whose emotional traumas sometimes lead to violent death. Her later novels seem to be an attempt to move beyond the sometimes suffocating psychological studies of her earlier works. As part of the attempt, she seems to have switched in her novels such as In Custody and Baumgartner's Bombay to male-centered plots. Contemporary Indian English novel started in the true sense only with the publication of Midnight Children in 1981 by Salman Rushdie, that brought about a renaissance in Indian writing in English. On the one hand, Rushdie's fame identified an international audience for Indian writers in English. On the other hand, commercial developments in English language publishing within India have played their part in enabling a new crop of novelists to come forward. Many writers who publish abroad now also insist on a separate Indian edition of their work. Ravi Dayal's publishing house has nurtured a group of writers identified with Delhi's elite St. Stephen's College, like Amitav Ghosh, Shashi Tharoor, Upamanyu Chatterjee, Runkun Advani, etc. Contemporary Indian fiction is by and for the expanding urban middle class. It is the world of the middle class which provides the most obvious context for the new Indian writing in English. New novelists of the 1980s have tried to demonstrate that the Indian tang is not a pure essence, but a masala mix of a culture that has always been able to appropriate influences from outside the subcontinent. From this point of view, English is implicated in the polyphony of Indian languages, its colonial authority relativized by entering into the complexity that it describes. The most sustained response to the opportunities created by Salman Rushdie's precedent has come in Amitav Ghosh's fiction. In his fictional and non-fictional works, he is concerned with India's place in larger international and cultural network, whose fiction seems directly informed by contemporary academic debates about colonialism and culture. His first novel, The Circle of Reason, very much written in Rushdie's magical realist style. His second novel, The Shadow Lines, deals with the idea of nation and nationalism and spans 2 continents and many nations. The Calcutta Chromosome is concerned with the relationship between science, history and colonialism in a futuristic detective fiction. His novel As Chronicle, The Glass Palace, meditates on large historical international issues such as diaspora, migration, refugees, colonial hegemony and economic and cultural subjugation of populations by the West. His Ibis trilogy, that is Sea of Poppies, River of Smoke and Flood of Fire, deals with the opium wars between Britain and China in which Indian army participated. Contemporary Indian fiction is marked by a number of talented women writers like Shashi Deshpande, Geeta Hariharan, Arundhati Roy and Kiran Desai. After fiction, it is the turn of Indian drama in English. There is a paucity of drama in Indian writing in English as compared to other literary genres. Its output has been scanty. The real journey of Indian English drama began with Michael Madhusudan Dutt's Is There Called Civilization that came in 1871. Rabindranath Tagore, the Nobel Prize winner dramatist and the epitome of Indian spiritual heritage, wrote primarily in Bengali, but almost all his plays were translated into English. His important plays are Chitra, The Post Office, Sacrifice, Red Oleanders, Muktadhara, The King of the Dark Chamber, The Cycle of Spring and many others. All these plays are representative of the Indian ethos and display a unique blend of simplicity and complexity, conventionality and modernity. Tagore played the roles of interpreter and mediator between the East and the West. His plays are famous not only for the careful noting of the plot, but also for the music of ideas and symbols. Sri Aurobindo Ghosh, writing between 1890 to 1920, was a major Indian playwright. His dramatic genius is reflected through his 5 complete blank verse plays and 6 incomplete plays. His complete plays are Perseus, The Deliverer, Vasavadatta, Rodogan, The Wazirs of Basora, Eric, the King of Norway. Tagore and Aurobindo's tradition of poetic drama was continued by Manjari Ishwaran, G.V. Desani and Pratish Nandi. Manjari Ishwaran's Yama and Yami is a dialogue in poetic prose, dealing with the incestuous love of Yami for her brother. G.V. Desani's Hali is entirely different kind of play that received high praise for its originality, symbolism and imagery. Girish Karnad, another dramatist, is a prolific writer, actor and movie director in Kannada language. He is the recipient of Jnanpith Award, the highest literary honor conferred in India. For 4 decades, Girish Karnad has been composing plays, often using history and mythology to tackle the contemporary issues. It was Tughlaq, which was published in 1972, his second play which established his eminence as a dramatist. His other plays are Hayvadna, Nagamandala. The next notable dramatist is Vijay Tendulkar. He is also a leading playwright. Many of Vijay Tendulkar's plays derive inspiration from the real life incidents or social upheavals which provide the clear projection of the harsh realities. He provided his guidance to students in a morally collapsed family structure and explores the theme of violence. His Sakaram Binder deals with the topic of domination of the male gender over the female gender. Ghanshiram Kotwal treats the political violence. It is a political satire set in the 18th century as a musical drama. Silence, Court is in Session, The Rich, An Island Named Man or Some Other Place by Vijay Tendulkar. Uma Parmeshwaran is also a notable women dramatist. She has written the plays Sons Must Die and other plays, Dear Didi, My Sister, Rootless but Green or The Bollywood Tree. She has handled different subjects. Sons Must Die is a war play against the background of the Kashmir conflict of 1948. It centers on the experiences of three women. This play is influenced by her interest in Greek tragedies containing a chorus and a stylized language of verse, whereas Rootless but Green or The Bollywood Tree is a social play with a modern setting presenting the problem of immigration in Canada. Dear Didi, My Sister describes the life and hardship of immigrants in Canada through a variety of characters. Contemporary Indian literature, whether poetry, drama or novel, is replete with a variety of themes such as feminism, lesbian and gay themes, concerns for the subaltern, eco-criticism and anthropological concerns, historical sense and many others. Novelists of contemporary age are doing experiments and producing variety of genres such as crime fiction, detective fiction, campus novel and graphic novel. So, here is the end of this brief history of Indian writing in English. Thank you.